Hello, welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Pride and Prejudice. Chapter 12, Darcy Pays an Unexpected Call. Elizabeth was sitting by herself the next morning and writing to Jane when she was startled by a ring at the door. Her friends had gone shopping in town and she wasn't expecting any visitors. To her great surprise, Mr. Darcy entered the room. He seemed astonished to find her alone and quickly apologized for his intrusion. They sat down, and after her polite inquiries of everyone at Rosings were made, they lapsed into total silence. It was absolutely necessary to think of something, anything to say. "How suddenly you all quit Netherfield last November, Mr. Darcy. Mr. Bingley and his sisters were well. I hope they left when you left London," Elizabeth murmured. "Perfectly so, I thank you," he replied courteously. "I understand that Bingley has no interest in returning to Netherfield again?" she asked. "I have never heard him say so, but it's probably the case. He has many friends, and at his age, his friends and social engagements keep growing," Darcy noted. "I should not be surprised if he were to give up Netherfield as soon as any reasonable offer on the estate was made." Elizabeth made no answer. She was afraid of talking too much about his friend and his treatment of her sister. Instead, she decided it was up to him to lead the conversation. He took the hint, and as he gazed around the drawing room. "This seems a very comfortable house. Lady Catherine, I believe, did it a great deal when Mr. Collins first came to Hunsford. Mr. Collins also appears very fortunate in his choice of a wife," he added politely. "Yes, indeed, his friends may rejoice in his having met one of the very few sensible women who have accepted him. Charlotte is very smart, though I am not certain that I consider her marrying Mr. Collins the wisest thing she ever did. She seems perfectly happy, however. In purely economic terms, it is certainly a good match for her," stated Elizabeth frankly. "It must be very nice to be settled not too far from her own family and friends," Darcy said. "An easy distance," Elizabeth said incredulously. "It is nearly 50 miles. It is not a woman must always be close to her family. If one has money, distance becomes unimportant. But that's not the case here. Mr. and Mrs. Collins have comfortable income, but not one that allows for frequent travel." Mr. Darcy drew his chair a little towards her. "Do you have such a strong attachment to Longbourn?" he asked. Elizabeth was surprised by this question. She started to reply, but her words were cut short by the arrival of Charlotte and her sister, who were returning from their walk. Finding Darcy there surprised them. Mr. Darcy explained his own surprise at having found Miss Bennet alone. Then, after wishing the ladies a good day, he left. "What could be the meaning of this?" asked Charlotte as soon as he was gone. "Eliza, he must be in love with you, or he never have called on us in this familiar way." But Elizabeth heartily disagreed. She felt he had nothing but contempt for her and her family. Thus, Mr. Darcy's visits to the parsonage remained a mystery. It wasn't her company, Elizabeth decided, as he frequently sat for 10 minutes without saying a word. Charlotte had once or twice suggested to Elizabeth that Darcy was interested in her, but Elizabeth always laughed at the idea. As a result, Charlotte didn't press the subject. She didn't want to raise her friends' expectations lest they disappoint. In fact, in her kind schemes for Elizabeth, she had planned for her to marry Colonel Fitzwilliams. He had much to offer: a pleasing manner, an excellent position in society, but unlike Mr. Darcy, he had no influence in the church, which was of great interest to the new Mrs. Collins. Perhaps Mr. Darcy was the man for Elizabeth after all. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.